Oh. For those of you who are regular watchers of the Don't Work With Tossers, the podcast, you see I'm sat in another chair and I've got all tongue-tied. You will realise that I am sat in the opposite chair to the one that I usually am, and that is because James Mellor of Albion Street Studios suggested that I had a episode that I was guest on, and there was only one person that I could have possibly asked to do this for me and be the guest host, and that is Deborah Ogden. So I am going to sit back and let her ask the questions on this Don't Work With Tossers, the podcast that will help you rid tossers from your life and improve your work-life blend. Special edition, Christmas edition probably by now.
So you're in the hot seat.
I am.
How does that feel?
It's fine. The light is a bit brighter at this side than it is at that side. But
well, the spotlight's on you today.
It is.
So, well, thank you for inviting me to be in your seat today. And let's start with your little book of tossers. So tell me about how that inspired you to get to where we are sat here now.
In 2017, I created 6 criteria for the work that I wanted to do and the people that I wanted to work with and the organisations I wanted to work with. And that had come about because I was just a little bit sick and fed up of people coming to me and expecting me to give my services for free. And as we both know, in the work that we do, that is something that can happen quite often. So I set 6 criteria, and they were, if it doesn't bring me income, if it doesn't bring me happiness, if it doesn't bring me promotion to bring me income or happiness, I won't do it. I won't work with organisations that take all my knowledge and expertise and use it as their own and don't credit me written or financially. I won't work with organisations that don't have the end user at heart or actually in their supply chain, that don't, care for the people in their supply chain. And criteria 6 was I won't work with tossers. And that's now criteria 1, as I've mentioned in some of the previous podcasts. But what I decided was I needed a place to record the tossers that came along. And so I went online and found a company where you could have your own books designed with your own covers. And I created Tina's Little Book of Tossers. And in there, I record the date that somebody has behaved like a tosser towards me, the name of the tosser, and their tossery behaviour. And I have to say it takes journaling to a whole new level. And it's very, very therapeutic. But if they ever come back to me again and ask if they can work with me, I then have a little flick through my book and think, no, there's no way that I'm working with you.
So nobody gets in there twice.
Nobody gets in that little book of tossers twice, no.
So I know you well, and I know that everything you do has other people at heart in some ways. You're always looking to help the business community, your network, your friends. So I know there's, we've laughed about the title and there's some sort of fun around the title. But actually, I know that there will be a real message that you want to get across with this podcast that goes far deeper. What's that message?
Well, I didn't really realise I was going to do a podcast until July. And as you were at this coffee meetup, although missed the initial conversation with Janet and Sinead, and they both suggested separately that I should do a podcast. And Janet even gave me the title of Don't Work With Tossers because of my little book of tossers. It was interesting because it was at a time where some people listening to this may know me from my decade of campaigning for micro business with Tony Robinson. And we'd stepped down from that in January 2022. And the ethos and mission behind that was to make life better for micro business owners. And we gave back to the micro business community through an online day of recognition, action and learning. And we gave our time doing different things and our money. And the one thing I found when we stepped down from that in 2022 was I felt like there was a little bit missing from what I did because I didn't feel I was giving back. So when it was suggested that I did a podcast, I thought, well, this is a great way of me bringing lots of different business owners together. And you've been a guest, you've sat in this chair. And actually using a very light-hearted title to bring some stronger underlying messages, because also this year I've rebranded as the Work-Life Blend Coach. I've always worked to ensure the well-being of the business and the business owner, usually often the micro business owner, to ensure the well-being of their business and them is as good as it can be. And that comes down to the work-life blend. And it's not balance, because work-life balance is impossible. I don't care what anybody says. And I think it was the 1980s when they started talking about work-life balance. And the trouble is with balance, it's like you have to have one or the other. Yeah. And it's not that. If, as we well know, if we run a business as business owners, that business is like having a child. That business sits at the dinner table with us at night when we don't necessarily want it to be there, and starts tapping on your shoulder when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody else.
It never goes, does it?
No. It comes on holiday with you, and you can be laying on a sunbed and you roll over and you go, because it's there looking at you with that question that you didn't quite answer before. It might be to do with the business development. It might be to do with some client issue that you've got going on, or it might be to do with content that you're trying to create, or whatever it might be. So it's about how you blend those two together. But one of the big things in work-life blend is actually the people that can impact that. Yeah. And they're often tossers. They often belong in my little book of tossers, even if they haven't quite made it. And helping us to rid those tossers. Don't work with tossers. Don't live with tossers. Don't, there's a whole different...
There's a whole series out there.
But helping to look at that with some of the messages that I knew that we could bring in the podcast, I felt it was a great way to give back some... And it's like you say, and honestly, I can't help myself. I can't help myself from doing it. And element 1 of the Work-Life Blend programme is it's all about you. And it looks at you or I or an individual and drills down about what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what you procrastinate over, what you jump to do, what grinds your gears, what makes you tick, and all of those things. And I know that actually one of the things for me is I get energy from helping other people.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, we talked about this on the episode where I was your guest, but I think it's an area where a lot of people don't really want to explore. But I wonder, as we're talking now, if it's perhaps that people find it difficult to explore. So working with a coach like yourself or myself, then that allows them to go down that path. And, that's a real foundation, isn't it, for the work-life blend?
And I think, my strapline is work-life blend, it starts with you, because it does. Yeah. Because if you don't know yourself, and if you don't know what you want, who you are, allow you, and I know we talk about being your authentic self, but actually sometimes that authenticity, you have to be critical of yourself. You have to understand the things you're good at and the things that you're not so good at and the things that you need in your life. I know that I need to eat 3 times a day, or I am a hangry person. I come from a long line of hangry people. I've got, and I have
Sons.
Yeah, after me. Well, one in particular and his children. But it's understanding that. So actually, if you've had a particularly bad day, you can look back and go, well, this was this day. Was it because somebody else impacted it? A tosser, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Was it because of something you've done that you know really you should do? So, as you know, because your perfectionism, one of your things was ironing towels, I like to start my day with ironing. And I share this on LinkedIn, and I share pictures of irons. And I also have an article that I've written, ironing a pile full of mindfulness. But actually, it really clears my head. And I'm no good at meditating. Don't try to tell me to go and meditate, because I can't do it. But ironing, I have no television, no radio. If it's summer, I open the doors and I'm listening. And as long as I don't get too lost in myself and iron my fingers, I've cracked it. But it helps me start my day. I know that about me. So actually, Monday to Friday, take that ironing out of my day. And ironically, it can have a detrimental effect how the rest of the day goes.
Yeah.
And I think it's back to that, because then we can understand what our work-life blend needs to look like.
Yeah, that's that self-leadership, isn't it? So as you say, it starts with you, and then it's moving on from that. That's your foundation. So let's start with you. What does work-life blend look like for you? How do you manage it, apart from ironing?
Apart from ironing, I was brought up in the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. My parents had pubs and hotels, and so the one thing that I've had from a very, very, very early stage, age 2, is 7 days a week working.
I'm just thinking, how do you blend in that environment?
Well, it's hard.
Yeah.
And it is really, really hard. And it's certainly a sector that's difficult. And it's a sector that I've worked in a lot, especially over recent years with B&B owners and the things I did with the B&B keeper. So it's back to understanding what it does look like for you. So I want to be able to work 7 days a week. I don't want somebody telling me it's Sunday, so you shouldn't be working.
Really?
Because actually, I'm quite productive early on a Sunday morning, writing, creative.
So it's actually about choice then, isn't it?
It is. And it's about, but equally, I don't want to work all day on a Sunday.
No.
And so it's how, if I have done that couple of hours, what's it going to look like? Your choice. You're being able to do that. But if I want to have Tuesday off as my Sunday, then that's fine. It's not just as good because my husband doesn't, he works like more of a Monday to Friday job, although he is also in a 7-day-a-week industry. He's in the events industry. So again, for him, it can happen. So it's how you bring that together. And the other thing for me is when we were campaigning with Microbiz Matters, Tony introduced me to a guy called Stefan Topfer, a very straight-talking German guy, who once said to me, Tina, I don't have work days and holidays. Every day is a work day or a holiday. It has the opportunity to be. And that really, really stuck with me. And I liked that because that's how I like to be able to work. So I go on holiday and I actually get energy. I get energy from being by water and by the sea, which is probably one of the reasons that we have continued to stay living on the Yorkshire coast. But I like to be able to get up in the morning and do some work. I like to be able to work wherever I am in the world.
Even on holiday? Do you ever choose not to work on holiday?
Yeah. But I like that choice. I like the option. And I have specific times when I won't do it. But equally, I might do a couple of hours a day and then have the rest of the time off. I might do the same at home. You know, I have grandchildren, and I like to spend time with them. Family is really, really important, big part of my work-life blend. But what I do is I work with time blocks. And I can imagine anybody that's worked with me rolling their eyes right now.
Here she goes.
Oh my God, Tina's talking about it. It's a bit like tossers. Tina's tossers and Tina's time blocks. It's like, so
all the T's.
All the T's. So I work with time blocks in my calendar. And in those time blocks, I have specific pieces of work. So if I say, for example, it was a really nice day on a Wednesday and I had something in a time block on that Wednesday afternoon, I would look to see where I could move that time block to.
Okay.
Make sure it didn't impact the work that I was doing. I didn't have any deadlines to meet. Can it be moved? In most cases it can, because I'm not working against those deadlines. And I understand that every industry, every sector, the way people work is all different, but it's about understanding how you can bring that work and life together. So you're not working I own my own business and I work 80 hours a week. Being busy is not a badge of honour.
No.
Being busy is a ridiculous...
So
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think something that you've said there then, so you're talking about flexibility and choice, but actually behind that flexibility and choice there's a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
So you must have really quite strong boundaries, and is that part of your work-life blend that you share with your...
It is. So let's look at the programme I've written. Element 1 is it's all about you. So that is what we've just discussed. Element 2 is, what does work-life blend look like to you? Because what it looks like to me, what it looks like to you, what it looks like to Danny and James, who are sat at the other side of the camera, it's all different. What it looks like to me and what it looks like to my husband is completely different.
Yeah, it's that
and
objectivity, isn't it?
It is. And the other thing is as well, work-life blend can look different from week to week, month to month. You know, quarter of a year. You get the picture. It's it can change. And the other thing as women, when we have hormones and hormonal imbalance, our work-life blend can actually, 1 week of the month, we may as well, in many cases, just write it off and make sure it looks completely different, because there is every chance we're knackered, we're an emotional wreck.
Cantankerous.
Argumentative was what I was going to... But yeah, cantankerous and argumentative. All of the
above.
All of the above. There is no need for our husbands to be sat at home. Yeah. Yes. And I don't even look at Danny and James. But it's about understanding.
I can confirm they're smiling, knowingly.
And it is all about that, though, isn't it? And it's about accepting that.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, because I was going to pick up on the fact that you said there's that flexibility and it's subjective. I said objective, it's very subjective. And there is that change. I think we can get, as business owners, we can get into that mindset of, well, this is how I do it and but that flexibility. And actually some weeks there is going to be more pressure due to family life or whatever it is, Christmas, the weather, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think to bring in that cycle, and I think that it's being talked about more and more, but it's about getting people to work at their best when they're at their best.
It is, and that is a big part of the work-life blend. So you just talked there about the weather. And one of my goals is to be able to spend more time in Spain. Why? Because I love blue skies. You know, I love the sunshine, I love the blue skies. I love being here in the UK and being with my family, but it's something it's something that I want to do. It's a goal that I've got. But I know there was a period in sort of September time when it was always raining, or it felt like it was, grey skies every day, and I was starting to get tetchy. And I knew what the problem was, because suddenly we had a blue sky day, and it was like my energy was completely different. But the other thing, once you've got past what work-life blend looks like to you, element 2 of the programme, you then go to element 3, which is finances. And so many people have said to me when I've said, oh, I'm a work-life blend coach, oh, well, isn't that just doing about a bit more exercise? Or is that not just about, spending a bit more time doing what you enjoy doing? Actually, no. Because one of the biggest stresses we have, whether we're a business owner or whether we're, an employee or we're a student even, is financial stress.
Yeah.
And if we haven't got the income coming in, if our overheads are greater than our income, all of that, we've got debt, all of those things, massive stress, financial stress. Crikey, with business owners, I've been in business 35 years, the roller coaster of financial stress doesn't even bear thinking about the amount of hours that I've lost to it. So it's understanding our personal survival income and also our business cash flow. And where we make our best money. Yeah. Because as business owners, if there's a business owner out there that can tell me they have done business where they've not valued the product or the service correctly, where they've ended up over-delivering and, gone beyond because they're trying to keep a client happy, all of those things. But we need to look at where we make our best money, where we get the best return on the time and the effort invested. And when we understand that, we can make better money.
Yeah, I remember a coach saying to me very early doors, I said something, he said about a piece of work, and I said, well, I don't really want to do that. And he said, well, that's okay, Deborah. He said, but what are you in business for? And at the end of the day, we're in business to make money. And yes, hopefully we're doing work that we enjoy, that we find fulfilling, but the finances side has to work.
Yeah, and if the finances side, if you're looking at that cash flow, your predicted cash flow, then and you haven't got enough income for your expenditure, that is going to seriously impact your work-life blend.
Of course it is, yeah.
And then you've got to look at the people around you. That's element 4, build your crowd wisely. Because actually, you don't need a massive network. You don't need to have hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram or...
Yeah, but let me ask you about that, because I think if somebody said to me, tell me about Tina, I think your network would be the thing that I would have, certainly in the top 3 things I would talk about you. It's something that you've built, and that's through your personality, the way you share, the way you're supportive of people. You're a wonderful cheerleader to me personally, but I know to many other people. So is that something that you actively went out to do to build your network, or is that just something that you love doing as a person?
I love doing it. I can't help but bring people together. And that's a bit like doing this. I wanted to do 12 episodes in season 1. I mean, I could have ruled one out because I'm ending up being the guest, but I still had to find a guest host. But it is something that I do and do naturally. And when I look back over the years, like when my mum and dad had the pub, and on a Sunday lunchtime, Mum would be cooking and Dad would be behind the bar, and we had this beer garden and we had all these 2 acres. Oh, it was beautiful. We were so lucky. And but I would be out on the swings talking to the other boys and girls that were on the swings or out there. It was in a village, so we had a lot of, there were lots of people around us, and it was very different then, 50 years ago. Gosh, that makes me sound really old. Anyway, but I would ask them, and what's your name, and where do you live, and what does who are you here with? And my parents will say to me, oh my God, you were even networking back then. But I don't. The word networking is not. It doesn't fill me with joy. But bringing people together, collaborating, I love nothing more than somebody saying to me, oh, I need somebody to do X. And I go, oh, well, speak to X, Y, or Z person. Let me introduce you. And do I go out to hook up with people? No, I just, it's something that comes naturally, I suppose.
Are you naturally curious then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nosy. Yeah.
I was being polite.
Yeah, no, naturally curious. I'm a naturally curious person. And I can't help myself but ask questions. So what is it that you know, oh, lovely, and do you have, you know, just all those things. But then, as my husband would refer to it, although I am less about this, and we were talking about this, he calls it an anal retentive memory, that allows me, but I'm not just as good at that now. As a menopausal woman, I find it...
As a woman of a certain age.
I do find it hard to remember people's names.
So we've had the 5. What's number 6?
No, we haven't had 5. We've only had 4.
Oh, I thought 5. Sorry, I can't count. That's my age. I thought we'd had the
Build your crowd wisely is 4. And number 5 is systems, processes and productivity.
Oh, you see, that's the one that doesn't feature in my world, so that's why I skipped over that one.
Well, I did just laugh when you said, oh, so we've had 5. I thought... Does Deborah remember what number 5 was? No, Deborah, we have systems, processes and productivity. Sorry, it needs to be discussed because you did ask me about being disciplined, and actually those are the disciplines. Those are the things that help me keep it on track, helps everybody keep it on track.
Yeah.
And number 6 is actually keeping on track. And no matter how hard we try, how hard we try to build our work-life blend and get it as we want it, basically shit happens, as we know in life. You know, you are going through with your dad at the moment, and that has an impact on your work-life blend because things happen. You know, you have a son who's this year done his GCSEs, and that again has an impact because you've got to, you know, it's not just about the big things like COVID that like a massive global impact. It's the everyday things that affect us. Yeah. And as business owners, we then need to be able to go back and go, right, this is the thing that's impacting me. What is it in amongst all of this? And if it's something else, we need to then look at it. But it's important that we have these elements to understand that helps build up our work-life blend. And it's not just about going out for an hour's extra walk a day.
I think what you do beautifully, actually, is you give people permission, which I think is incredibly important, and it's perhaps not always recognised. So, final question. When you're talking to people, you've worked with businesses for, did you say 30 years?
Well, I've been self-employed for 35 years, apart from a very brief employed period at the end of my 30s, which was the most ridiculous idea, and I'm completely unemployable, and employment will never, ever, ever... I don't ever want to be able to give up work, but I really don't want to work for anybody else apart from as a contractor or as you know, somebody as my client. I'm totally unemployable. So I've worked in the business support world for 10
years.
Maybe a bit longer. Before that, I've had, you know, retail business, property lettings and management, property construction, all property development. Yeah. And I've done a lot of work in the charity sector, voluntary as well. So
what's your biggest lesson learnt?
My biggest lesson learnt is actually working with the people that don't bring you joy and energy. And yeah, we have to do things in business that maybe aren't always our ideal, what we want to do. But actually, if the passion is in doubt, I question whether you need to get out. And that's one thing that I use all the time. Because if you haven't got a passion, a fire in your belly, and don't get me wrong, we can't be motivated every day because for all sorts of reasons, but if that constant lack of motivation is there, then I would say to you, look at what you're doing, and it's okay to change direction. It's okay to do something else. And we don't have to stay on that same career path. We can have multiple careers. We can have multiple businesses. We can have a portfolio of them. What we've got to have is the energy and drive and enjoyment, because as we both know, life is way too short to be working with tossers.
Absolutely.